You know what the funny thing is? You know how we make fun of those date windows where like it's open and you see multiple dates and everyone yells is like, well, that doesn't help anything. This is the opposite. This is actually like a date that makes it more difficult to read the date. Like no one's saying like, oh, and we've invented something to make it read the date easier. Like this is significantly harder.
This week, play along at home with our favourite game, Guess the Price of the Seiko. Find out what Louis Vuitton are up to and hear the latest from Mathieu at Watches and Wonders and Christian from Time to Watches. Finally, subscribe to the Spending Time podcast channel in readiness for all the up-and-coming Geneva coverage. And if you want Jackie and me back on the show, feel free to bombard Richard and Ariel with emails, DMs, requesting us on, because we're amazing. Enjoy the show!
Greetings and welcome to this week's aBlogtoWatch Weekly. We were joined by a rather travel-weary Ariel last time he was on, and I think we can now multiply that by 10. Ariel is full of some nice low-energy vibes that he's going to bring to the show this morning. Good morning, Ariel.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you made it.
I'm here. Yep.
Tell us about British Airways.
No.
Too soon.
So, Ariel, did you have to sleep in the airport?
Technically, I did, but that was because there was a hotel in the airport. But
and was the cause of being stuck in London for an extra day snow or weather or general managerial incompetence?
Airplanes happened.
We'll call it Heathrow.
Heathrow happened. But we British love a good queue, so we just decided to add you to one.
Well, the funny thing was when the flight was missed and they told me I had to stay in London, the flight was not missed for my fault. It was theirs. It was the connecting flight was just so late. They wanted me to stay there without my luggage. They wanted to keep my luggage in the hold. I was like, how exactly do you expect me to spend the night without, like a change of clothing or something like that? And they were so annoyed that I wanted them to go get my luggage so that I could do that thing I don't want to do, which is stay an extra night. I was sort of incensed about the fact that like they just, I mean, I don't know what it is, but at this point in travel, maybe in other places in the world, we're so much more cattle than we've ever been.
Welcome to Cattle Class. David, how are you? Are you relaxing in your new flat house? Have you moved?
Yes, I have. I'm sure it's a bit echoey this time, as I technically have not too many pieces of furniture yet, so I'm still waiting for a few things here and there, which is hysterical.
Somebody
in some
buy
way,
David a tapestry. Tapestries for David's apartment.
Yes, thank you.
Something nice and sound absorbent for the walls.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's all good. A hilarious thing happened. I will tell you this because I think last week or the week before, I teased that I was going to get this watch in for review, and it went to the boutique because they help handle all the documentation and stuff for the temporary import from Switzerland into the EU and then back. And the watch, I haven't seen the watch in like 3 weeks, and it's always with some sort of a client or something like that. And once I actually go to the boutique, I will tell them, I will offer this to them. Like, if you want some nice piece, just let me know and I will get it for you from HQ. Because it's like, basically they are all like tearing it apart and everyone wants a piece of it and spend some time with the watch. So it just shows how crazy this world is where even like authorized dealers sometimes don't get like really cool pieces. And once they get one in through press, it stays with VIP clients and others. So that's what's happening right now. And I'm getting a bit unnerved by it.
So have you still not seen it?
No.
Is it fair to say you have intentions with this particular watch that involve lasers?
Yes, actually I do.
And so basically a 10-year-old boy inside that's just wanting to play with this watch and play with lasers. Yes. That's basically where we're up to. Exactly.
It's going to be a photography experiment of sorts on aBlogtoWatch, so we'll see how that goes. But I need the watch first.
Yes. We don't just want a picture of lasers. That's not very entertaining.
Yeah, and it's not like I can go out and buy another one because it's 110,000 euros. So it's kind of difficult to source.
Maybe this is one of these things you actually need to buy it and then like 14-day return policy or something. Like just don't take the stickers off.
Changed my mind. Doesn't react well to lasers.
Yes, I bought this specifically for use with lasers, and it's not happening. Yeah. So there we go. Good stuff. Well, we have an unusual show today because even though we're recording it right now, we actually don't know what's going to be on it because there is so much media already working its way in from all things Watches and Wonders. So there may be some interviews, there may not be some interviews, maybe bits of interviews. But do check out this channel, aBlogtoWatch Weekly, but also check out the Spending Time channel because some of the longer interviews will be in full in that channel, and we will have some of the shortened versions, the highlights if you like, here, but more of that later on today's show. I think because of the travelling, we do have to play aBlogtoWatch, Watches Watches. So Ariel, your extra night in London, all these plane journeys, did you watch any good films and see any good watches?
Oh, wow. I tried to spend a lot of time watching Paramount Plus because they're trying to tease you with stuff on British Airways. One of the nice things. Here's 3 episodes, and no, you can't see any more. So I saw, I saw some, yeah. Well, they're trying to think. What did I see that had watches? There was the Star Trek stuff. No watches, unfortunately. The civilized future, but everyone's wrists are empty. Don't understand it.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I think it's a very good point that they don't wear anything on their wrists.
I mean, they have like, it's a tech universe, but all they can have is this little handheld thing, and that's like the pocket watch, the communicator sticks in your pocket. Why not just have it on your wrist? Anyways, then I watched a little bit about The Offer, which was loosely based on the making of The Godfather. And that had some cool watches in it, sort of period stuff from the 70s. That was interesting. But yeah, everything else was either too old, something like that. But I'm sad to say I didn't get any good watch spotting in.
Oh, disaster. Well, can I just trail here a film that I saw last night, in fact. 0 watch content, but an absolute must-watch. Simply one of the best films I've seen on Netflix, just arrived on Netflix, called The Fall.
The fall of what?
Fall of 2 people climbing a 2,000-meter television mast. It's a horror movie.
Oh.
So it's not a horror movie in it's gore and ghosts and stuff. It's just a psychological drama, and it is absolutely epic.
I just thought of a great movie idea. David's going to star in it, and it's a thriller, and he wakes up, and he realizes he lost his very expensive watch, and the entire movie is him frantically trying to figure out where it is. He's retracing his steps. It's like some $200,000 watch that he borrowed is not his. It's just him having no idea where it is, frantically running around. Time is running out. He has to return it. The hope of him finding it is reducing with each scene. I think there's something to this. Such a thriller.
Yes.
That sounds like that idea might have been birthed in some sort of reality, Ariel. Have you ever lost a watch that someone has sent you in for review?
Me? No.
No? Never even briefly lost it? God, where did I put that? The postman's here to collect it.
There's that. I've had my heart stop a few times. There's a $100,000 tourbillon somewhere in my house and I can't find it. Usually it's under a napkin, some very easy place was right there, but watches are like that. They can just disappear under something so easily.
Yeah, and why is my child sitting in the corner playing with an empty Rolex box?
Oh boy.
David, ever lost a watch or come close?
I've misplaced one in the sense that I've hid one when I was a bit drunk and I couldn't find it the morning after, and I was supposed to give it back. I'm not sure if I told this story, but it happened, and that was a heart-stopping moment for sure.
This sounds like a story you're about to tell.
It was a different company at the time because it was under a different leadership and stuff, and it's totally not valid for the company as it is today. But at the time, we used to have some crazy times with this company, and all I will say is that they have done some limited editions for a decade or so for Bugatti, and there was this $200,000 watch that was shaped like a teardrop, and it had this vertical movement and all this nonsense. And we were at this jazz festival, and I decided at 11 p.m. or something like that, at this crazy hour, to borrow it from the window and go out. And I had this, when the film is cut and you have this blackout and you just only have little moments. It was totally like a hangover movie, basically. And I was I went to a disco once, and I remember I was in a disco. I don't know how I made it there. And I got back to my room, and I was supposed to give it back the morning after. This was 8 years ago. And I hid the watch because I was this is really expensive. I have to hide it well. And I did it so well that I had to turn my complete room inside out and upside down. And I found the watch hidden inside a sock behind the desk or stuck under a drawer or some nonsense like that. And I was like, oh my God, I don't remember half of last night. Again, obviously in my early 20s or something like that at the time. And I don't do this kind of stuff anymore, but it was like one of these stories. And this technically is exactly what Ariel described. It's like a hangover movie while finding a watch, retracing my steps, like what happened?
The best horror films have a little dose of reality in them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Can we just call it, Dude, Where's My Watch?
Dude, where's my watch?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, if any of the audience have any suggestions for watch-themed titles that you can change famous movies to, then do message the show podcast at aBlogtoWatch.com. Ariel, I want to know if David reported this incident to HR.
No, that's just part of the job. He only has to report if he loses it. If he goes crazy trying to find it, that's just part of the obligations.
Yeah, I deserve that.
You did. Ariel, let's get your view on the MoonSwatch, because we haven't heard from you.
Well, I had a long discussion with some people who know quite well about how this special gold hand was made and certain elements of the storytelling. I think the consensus is while the watch itself is nice looking, people are a little bit disappointed in what Swatch did exactly. Let's begin with the fact that this is essentially the same version as one that's available with a different hand, and people felt with all the different color options and materials available, why Omega would choose to do something, or Swatch, we're not even sure who makes these decisions anymore, why they did something that was so similar to what they did before. That seemed a bit strange. And I think a second part of the problem was this strange story about the hands being made in a full moon. And people are like, okay, so what? Couldn't you have made it any other time? And the answer is yes. And so I think that the Swatch group is understanding that storytelling is not just sort of like a side thing. You can't just, they're like, we know there needs to be a story, but I don't know that but they think it's sort of like a corollary. Like it just sort of has to be in there. It's a necessary thing. A product will sell itself. And the reality is no. Even 1 year after the real craze around the MoonSwatch, you still need to engage in a thorough level of storytelling. And I really think that that's sort of a little bit what Swatch or Omega or whatever was missing in this context. You know, it's nice and all, but there's really no serious explanation for why you made it, and the storytelling around it is flimsy at best. So I think that's really the consensus right now. Yeah, David, any reflections a week later on the release?
My reflection is that I haven't given it a second thought ever since I wrote about it. It's it is as though it didn't exist. The whole story and the whole thing is, I would call it whimsical, but that's too kind. I think it's just nonsense, really. Trying to justify like, oh, why we did this in the moon, and then it was not explained properly anywhere on the website or in the press materials, which barely exists, or on social media. It was this weird release. And again, building, you build hype when you have a product to back it up. And I don't think that here the two aligned. Expectations were really high, and people were looking forward to seeing like something that is like maybe gold plated or something like that. Like there are those crazy G-Shocks with the gold plated bracelet and case and all that. And they are bonkers, but they are also a laugh. And it's strange that Casio can afford this to themselves, and Swatch, who technically brought fun into watches back in the 80s, can't. It's a kind of a serious watch. It's presented in a little bit like, we're trying to justify why this is more expensive or why you need to have this, as opposed to just creating a more fun version. It's to me, it's not really a fun version of a MoonSwatch at all.
And do you think it's done any harm to brand the MoonSwatch, or as you say, is it just move along, nothing to see here?
It's just a fluke, I think. I don't think that there's much harm. I think if they bring out an actually fun and cool version, people will go and get it.
I mean, there's no harm on the consumer side. The only harm, perhaps, is what we as members of the media say, but frankly, we are such a small member of that demographic. Remember, Swatch didn't really care about most of the media's focus. They didn't really send watches out. They just sort of had the press release. Like, this was a consumer push through and through, and Swatch and Omega are trying to see how consumers respond to it. Typically, they respond in the way that we predict. Sometimes we're wrong, but I really think that that's really what they're trying to do right now. They are trying to see how easy it is to come out with new versions of these things. And again, they're realizing that the storytelling part has to be a really huge part of it. And if you remember what we said last year when the MoonSwatch first came out, everyone agreed this is not something that Swatch could just repeat the next year. We all thought that they would try to repeat the same year, but everyone agreed, like, this is not something you can do every year. This is a once-in-a-while thing, and Swatch seems to kind of want to do what we suggested they don't do, which is do it every year.
Yeah, looking at it, the thing just seems to have died away. Like, as David says, he's not given it another thought in the last week, and that would appear to be the watch internet's general consensus is, yeah, that's fine. What's next? Now, there is plenty next, and it is because he texted me to say it was his favourite section. We've got Guess the Price of the Seiko this week. We have a number of Seiko drops, so let's delve into that.
Damn, I'm going to do so bad.
Are you ready, gentlemen? Well, maybe jet-lagged will help. Who knows? Now, the first thing I will point out is every single one of these releases celebrates a date of some description. So we have a 110th anniversary. We then have a 1970s modern reinterpretation and a 1968 modern reinterpretation. So go figure as to why all of this is strictly necessary. But we're going to play our game. So first up, gentlemen, Seiko continues its 110th anniversary celebration with 4 new Presage watches. Now, I'm not going to make you guess the price of all 4 of them, but what would you like to know in order to make a guess?
Okay, so let's hear movement, case material, dial, bracelet. Just give me the rundown.
So all of them are on straps.
Okay.
They are marked as Seiko Presage Automatic. Power reserve, running seconds. 2 of them have a retrograde date complication. So they're kind of calendars, day and day of the week.
Colorful dials?
One is a kind of porcelain. There's in a kind of enamel type. And then there is a burgundy or a burnt orange and a blue.
Are they limited?
3 of them are limited to 1,500 pieces and 1 is limited to 800 pieces.
I'm going to say about $800. I have no idea. I'm just guessing.
$800 for Ariel. David?
Yeah, 1,100.
1,100. Okay, well, drum roll. The most expensive is $2,050.
Oh my God.
US dollars.
We're both way off.
800 piece limited edition, and the cheapest is $1,850 US dollars, limited to 1,500 pieces. Turn yourself now to have a look at this watch on the article that Mike has written.
This is a good game.
I want you to have a look at the retrograde date complication on 2 of these watches.
I feel like I remember when other watches with not all these movements, some of them were priced less, especially the one with the power reserve. Like, I've definitely seen these in sub-$1,000 watches.
Oh yeah, these have been around for donkey's years, basically, this movement. Maybe not with the retrograde date, but...
I want to know about the retrograde date. They've done like 1 to 29... and then changed it, and then like on Microsoft Word, scroll down to make the 31 half the font size of the 29 in order to fit it in. I'm like...
You know what the funny thing is? You know how we make fun of those date windows where like it's open and you see multiple dates and everyone yells is like, well, that doesn't help anything. This is the opposite. This is actually like a date that makes it more difficult to read the date. Like no one's saying like, oh, and we invented something to make it read the date easier. Like this is significantly harder.
I think there's nothing more humiliating than if somebody is asking you what date it is and you have to like lift the watch really close up to your face like you're blind or you have an illegible watch. And with these pointer dates, you cannot even fake it. And it actually happened to me once. And I had some sort of a watch like this. Somebody else and I was like looking at my watch from like really close. And it's so hilarious. Like, what is wrong? Maybe your eyes are wrong or your watch is wrong, but something is not right. And I actually ended up like just bluffing something because it's so difficult to tell between 13 and 17 where you are basically, and you just try and make it up, So it is a weird indication for sure. It looks good on pictures, but it's borderline useless in real life.
Yeah, I just don't understand. I'm like, why not just leave the 31 off? Or start at 1 and go to 31 and just reduce all the font sizes? As you say, it's already a fairly difficult to read complication. So go and have a look at the pictures of the Seiko Presage with the retrograde date, and tell us why you think the 31 is half the size of the rest of the font of the numerals on it. It's very peculiar. Okay, so you both lost at that one. Let's see if you're any better at this. This is the Seiko Unveils the Prospex 1970 Divers Modern Reinterpretation Naomi Uemura Limited Edition SLA 069 watch. Now, you might suggest that this watch is going to be more expensive just because the name is longer, but who knows? So let's spin the wheel on this. This is a modern diver shaped in the kind of Captain Willard Apocalypse Now
I'm going to
style.
go with just under 2,000 here. Like 18 or 1,900 bucks, something like that. That's my again. I have no idea.
Okay,
No
it
idea.
is. It's on a brace, on a bracelet. Date of 4:30. It's the caliber 8L35. If that helps, and you reckon, Ariel, it's going to be what?
18 or 1,900 bucks, something like that.
Okay, 18 or 1,900 bucks from Ariel. David.
Well, I know that the 8L is a fancy movement, so that is putting me off here. Otherwise, I would have said it's $450, but just because of that movement.
Don't forget, there's a little mountain motif on there.
Yeah.
Oh, but I really dislike this case style and this whole thing. It's not the bezel looks kind of cheap. I'm looking at the picture. I'm not looking at the price. But I'm looking at the picture, and I would have guessed $450. It's a fancy. It's a cool dial. It's whimsy, whatever. Cool. With that movement. I don't know, 1,500. Okay. And I'm being generous. Otherwise, $450.
You're both on fire today, gentlemen, in the sense that you should probably be set on fire. This watch is $2,900 US.
What?
So go figure.
Oh wow!
It's a very nice watch. I do like the blue. So the crown is blue, and the edge on the bezel, the grippy bit, if you like, has.
Oh yeah, they're an
blue
IP.
tinted.
$3,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go.
Hang on here.
So clearly.
Can you buy a Grand Seiko, maybe like a lightly used one for this kind of money? That's what I would do.
I'm sure. If anybody else, I'm sure you can.
I mean, the thing is, we're going off of, like, I guess I want to say past prices. Like, it's so hard for us to keep up here because, again, we have these expectations. Like, we've been, learning about new Seikos for so many years now, and, like, they're just completely throwing it off. Like, this is not at all what we expect.
Yeah. So let's see if you're going to strike out then with this. So we've just celebrated 1970s. We're now celebrating 1968. So Seiko debuts the new Prospex 1968 Divers Modern Reinterpretation GMT watch. So we had a Captain Willard at nearly $3,000. This adds a GMT complication to it in the Prospex range. So what would you like to know?
$4,000.
$4,000. So $4,000. There's a green, a black, a blue, which is actually quite nice. 3-day power reserve. It's the Seiko 6R54 movement, which is their new.
Do I up it? Do I say 4,300 now? I feel like everything you say makes me want to increase it.
Triple whatever you're thinking, Ariel.
So 4,300 from Ariel. David.
No. That's just silly. I will go. I kind of like this. I will go with $2,000.
$2,000 for David. Well, drum roll. David has actually almost got it. This is between 1,500 and 1,700, depending on whether you go. It's lower whether you go for. I think it's a limited edition of 4,000.
Wait a minute. It's a more complicated movement in a more sophisticated case, but it's less expensive.
Oh, I don't know. Don't ask me.
I don't know. It's
here.
A much better watch. It's so much better than the other one.
So there you go, and there we have. It's why we have our problem, Seiko. We really just don't understand it. I mean, they're all lovely watches.
Because this case style had more expensive. This is sort of the Marine Master style case. I mean, again, I don't. It's not like I really care, but like I just saying, like David, is it? If you saw the 3-hand of the GMT, would you just not assume that the GMT is more expensive?
Like 3 times more expensive. Again, $450 against $1,500. Fine. Not 1,500 compared to 2.9 thousand, like almost $3,000. That is not a $3,000 watch, however you look at it. The bracelet has like some polished elements in it, in the more expensive one. But the Prospex is just it's just a much better looking watch with the more, like, as you say, this Mary Muster kind of style case and all that, and the GMT and the 3-day movement. Wow, much better.
Wow. Well, it just goes to show the price points. I don't know where they come up with them. I mean, it's fine. It's hilarious. We have no clue.
No clue.
This is a good
whatsoever.
game. Thankfully, there's a new Seiko released every day, so we can play this every week, basically. Maybe we'll get the hang of it by the end of the year or something.
Like, if you just always say $2,000, then like a stopwatch, it will eventually be right twice a day. So, yeah, if anyone's... I feel like we should find a theme tune for this particular section. So if anyone's got a suggestion or would like to write as a piece of music, something similar to like the old Benny Hill theme tune, for those of you that are familiar with that show.
It's got to be some Japanese music. Some music from some classic Japanese show or something like that. It's got to be that.
With like the sound of karate chopping in the background, that
sort
of thing.
No, just some like fun, like celebrative, festive Japanese jingle.
Well, if you're into your Japanese jingle music, there must be like a famous commercial that somebody
there's this sketch in the what is it? Is it like the late night show with Stephen Colbert? And sometimes there's this sketch where they say like, Johnny, tell them what they want, and they say all kinds of stupid stuff, and then a dinette set from Broyhill or something like that. We could totally do that.
Or no, Seiko is doing all these limited editions for these old Japanese television shows, so we should just have the theme from those Japanese television shows. Just play a random one.
Okay, we'll
see. Guess the price of Seiko.
With the Ultraman music playing in the background or something.
Yes.
We'll see what we can find without getting sued. But yeah, let's go. So, I mean... all three of these watches, I think, are lovely watches, but seem to bear no resemblance to the price. But so well done, Seiko, in making.
Is everyone discovering a theme here? The point we're trying to make with these games?
Yes. Have you figured it out yet? There we go. Good stuff. One of the activities you were engaged in, Ariel, when you were overseas, was you spent some time at LVMH Group. There are 2 watches from LVMH that are worth speaking about this week. One you have just reviewed, which is this Opera Automata. I'm almost tempted to say, let's play Guess the Price of This. And the other is a new Street Diver from LVMH as well. But tell us about your trip to LVMH in general, because you were also engaged in discussions and an interview, some of which may be played on this show, or it may not be. It will be a surprise to all of us. But you were engaged with Jean Arnaud talking about the new LVMH Watch Prize. You want to give us a bit of an intro to that? And then, depending on whether we've got the audio ready, the interview will play here or somewhere else. I'll drop it in.
Yeah, well, let's clarify. It's Louis Vuitton, which, of course, is part of LVMH, but it's the Louis Vuitton brand. And I went to an event of theirs to see some of their new high watchmaking pieces. The funny thing is those Street Diver chronographs we really like weren't even there. So that was like what a lot of people were excited about. Didn't have them there. There was 5 main, very high-end watches that they were promoting. And the most exclusive of which was the follow-up to last year's Carpe Diem, which was this Automata watch with a skull, and it did all this crazy stuff. This year, they've taken the same movement, and it's the LV 525. It's very, very complicated. You don't even see the time on the dial unless you activate the animation. And rather than sort of this skull memento mori theme, they took a mask inspired by a traditional form of opera in the Sichuan region of China called Bian Lian. And these performances are typified by actors who wear these masks, and they change the look of the mask very quickly. They have all these special techniques where the masks change their emotions, they change colors, or they switch a different mask altogether. And this is not just sort of an operatic storytelling, but a performance art form unto itself. And this watch really is focusing on that. You could joke like, oh, it's just them kind of focusing on the Chinese market, which it is, but it's done well. And I think the funniest thing about that is even though the mask alone is probably enough to suggest something, deep in Chinese culture, they're just like, and let's throw a dragon on it as well. Just actually 2 dragons. So you have a dial where you have to push a button, and this face starts to animate, and this dragon head moves out of the way, and there's a window that displays the hours. It's a jumping hours display. And then there's a retrograde minute hand where the tip of this dragon tail sort of moves across a fan, and it points to the minutes. And then there's a gourd, which is the power reserve indicator. So this is, again, crazy high-end, very exclusive, $460,000, and it's pretty beautiful. The dial was painted by the famed Anita Porcher, and I think it's funny because she has her initials on there. It's AP, which is funny because most people associate Audemars Piguet with AP, but so there's a joke that it says AP on this Louis Vuitton dial. But Louis Vuitton is actually, for this year, started their own in-house enameling. So they will be another watch, the Fiery Heart, is another watch that came out this year, which I think is actually in a lot of ways more important because of the movement. It's a little bit less expensive. It has their first in-house enamel dial, as well as a brand new movement, which has Automata, a tourbillon, and is an automatic.
This is an impressive looking watch. It's an impressive movement. It's impressive artwork. You know, it's got a very limited appeal in terms of would you actually wear this or spend $400,000 buying it. But what is this
It's really pretty.
us?
It's really, really pretty.
I'm almost like, I don't know what question to ask about this watch, because it's like, what is it Louis Vuitton are trying to do by doing this sort of extreme production watch that is so culturally specific and so out there? Are they trying to actually sell these? I know that seems a bit of a daft question, because clearly they want to sell them, but is this about more than just selling the watch? Is this trying to reposition Louis Vuitton or enhance their position? You know, there are few brands that have produced, other than Seiko, there aren't that many brands that have produced so many different watches in the past few months or year. You know, there's been a lot of different output from Louis Vuitton. They really do appear to be, you know, Jean Arnault really does appear to be, you know, stepping up the game.
It's a good question. Remember, Louis Vuitton sees itself as a hub of culture, and they want to have a Louis Vuitton twist, if you will, on a lot of culturally significant things. What they found is that rather than going ultra generic with culture, actually can help them more by being very specific, where they have the sort of the generic Louis Vuitton collection of bags and watches and fashion, but then they have all these collaborations with very specific areas of culture from different places around the world. So that's one thing they're trying to do is maintain this quite important presence as being, you know, a hub for culture, even in the high-end luxury watch space. Also, Louis Vuitton, through Fabrique du Temps, where these watches are made, wants to leverage itself as the master of automata. Before now, you didn't have a lot of it. You had Christophe Claret doing a little bit, Ulysse Nardin doing a little bit, but the people at Louis Vuitton were very clear to say this is not your simple jacquemarts, which is these little kind of figures that just sort of move back and forth a little bit. Like, this is much more sophisticated automation. You have more difficult movements, a lot of things happening on the dial. There's actually going to be more things coming out in the next year or two that are even going to be much more complicated in terms of the automata. And I think it has to do with Louis Vuitton trying to say, we want to own this particular space. And you know, they're not trying to do perpetual calendars. They're not really trying to do, I mean, they do plenty of tourbillons, but they're trying to say, if you want something really crazy and you want to go to us, automata is going to be your thing. And I think that makes sense because there's a lot of competition in the space, and no one's really captured that as well as them. So I think that's the goal.
It's interesting because you know, there used to be every few years a new Jacques Dreux Automata, you know, watch, and you know, Montblanc used to do some of these crazy watches with the Metamorphosis and other obscure exercises in automated watches, where, like you say, it's much more complicated than just Jacquemart, where just figures move back and forth and they are somehow linked to a minute repeater or something like that. Whereas in an automaton watch, what happens is you press a button and some things move to the side and then other things lift up and all these crazy things happen. And to power these and to orchestrate these little movements and have enough torque to make it work and not grenade when, you know, when you operate for the third time, that's really, really difficult. And for some reason, this this market dried up over the last 5 years, right? I'm not sure when was the last time I saw a genuinely new one from Jacques Dro or from basically anyone else. I really don't know who was the last one who made like a really impressive automaton watch.
Louis Vuitton are trying to corner the market, if you like, and become super well known for automata watches. Is there a thinking that this creates a trickle-down effect into the day-to-day stuff? Do they see a link between producing super high-end that is so different from a normal-looking watch that it will actually trickle down to the likes of the street diver? Because to me, those two things seem so different that I'm not sure there is a trickle down. Whereas I can see the idea that if Audemars Piguet produce a super high-end Code 1159, as they have done recently, that there is some sort of trickle down to the 15, 20 grand three-hander Code 1159.
I would ask you to consider the different contexts within which these watches are sold. The street divers are going to be mostly sold on the Louis Vuitton website as well as in their stores. A watch like the Opera Automata is probably never going to show up in a retail space. It's going to be sold through private meetings. You know, Louis Vuitton has a lot of very close relationships with a lot of VIPs. They will meet with them personally. They will invite them to events, such as the one that I attended in Courchevel. So these are going to be sold in a completely different context. So yes, they both say Louis Vuitton on them, but they're sold in different ways to very different audiences.
Talk to us then briefly about the street diver. This feels to me like the street diver is beginning to find its sector. I don't know if it's a bit like, you know, the watches that are reminiscent of, again, to go back to AP, the Royal Oak, such as being produced by Chapek or Chopard or even Piaget, those kind of integrated steel sports watches that now that it's a couple of years to them being pushed, have their own identity now away from the Royal Oak. This is beginning to feel like to me that Louis Vuitton have pushed this significantly enough in the last few years that this now doesn't feel like a stretch to be the kind of watch that you would go and buy. Whereas before, I think the whole mega branding of Louis Vuitton everywhere. Louis Vuitton is on the dial, on the bezel, on the strap, and presumably it's on the back of the watch as well. That feels to me like it's beginning to gain more acceptance and that this watch is beginning to settle into its sector of desirability. How do you both feel about the journey that this particular street diver is on?
I'm glad to hear you say that, Rick, because I think that for a lot of people, Louis Vuitton is primarily a female-focused brand. That's sort of the perception that they have. And when they see these masculine watches, that they're just confused. Like, do I buy a men's product from a women's watch brand? Again, that's a very Western perspective on the matter. I've been into Louis Vuitton watches for a long time, and similar with other, we'll call them fashion houses, because they tend to do a very good job. And I'm really glad to hear you say that you're now being a little bit open-minded to this. My sort of playful name with this is the High Street Diver, because it's not particularly cheap. It is beautiful. And for whatever reason, this generation still only has 100 meters of water resistance, whereas previous generations of the Louis Vuitton Tambour divers have 300 meters of water resistance. I discussed this with them a little bit, and it really has to do with the way the case back, I believe, is attached. It's not screwed down, but screwed in. And they wanted this because they felt like it would be a little bit thinner and looks a little bit closer to the hardware on their luggage and things like that with these sort of screwed elements. So I think that, you know, they're also trying to find the exact vibe. Because remember, the actual divers were nice, but never really that successful, right? They were nice, but again, not that well known. And the people that, you know, would normally have purchased a real diving watch were enthusiasts that weren't all that into the Louis Vuitton brand. Now, the enthusiasts are starting to look at it, and Louis Vuitton's going to say, oh, well, let's get focused on making some sort of more serious sport watches. What I think is really great about this version is that it is a chronograph, never had a chronograph in the Tambour Diver collection at all, and we start to see more of a focus on here. So I'm really glad to hear you say that you could see yourself wearing one of these on a daily basis. They are fun, and they are pretty, and I look forward to seeing them on my wrist soon.
Yeah, I would love to see them in person because they are 46 millimeter wide, and they look rather large to me, and they have this tiny little dial in the middle of this watch, and that can look cool. But again, I think it's best assessed when seen in the metal, and that is yet to happen for me. But I've been fond of these watches and fond of the Tambour for a long time. I think it's an excellent collection, and I understand the appeal, and it's great that it's strange. You see, like, as watch guys, we tend to like dig deep into watches, and once you've been through these run-of-the-mill watches of sorts, then you get attracted to these things. And I really appreciate it when big brands with huge egos can still go out there and create something fun as this. Sure, it's expensive, but at the same time, it's a fun watch that I could totally see myself wearing on a beach or on a holiday or somewhere, and then wear it on a daily basis on the streets and have me remind me of the good times that I was having with the sun. So I like that exercise. I like a light-hearted watch, and this is one of those, and that's always fun for me.
Good stuff. I'll go and check out the articles on LVMH and Louis Vuitton that are on the aBlogtoWatch.com website. Well, I'm a bit unclear as to what's coming next, so we're going to riff it for a bit, and then there may be an interview after this. It will be one of 3, and they'll either all be here or there'll be little sections, and if you want to listen to the full thing, you can pop across to the Spending Time channel to listen to the full interviews. But one of the interviews that will almost certainly run is with Christian Wipfli from Time to Watches. Now, this, if you listened to the interview with Mathieu from Watches and Wonders, you'll have noted that there's lots of other things going on in Geneva during Watches and Wonders, and one of those is the Time to Watches exhibition, which for the first time is open to the public. So here is maybe a little bit of Christian talking about Time to Watches. We are delighted to welcome to the show a slightly nervous, non-English speaking Christian Wipfli. Now, I will almost certainly have pronounced your surname incorrectly, Christian.
Yes, it's right. Wipfli.
But that is the consequence of the fact that I can't speak your language at all, but at least you're going to have a valiant effort at speaking mine. So welcome, Christian, to the show. And Christian is running the Time to Watches show during the same week that Watches and Wonders runs. So we thought we'd get Christian on just to tell the listeners all about it, because there is more than just one thing going on in Geneva during the Watches and Wonders week. There are loads and loads of brands. So if you haven't been able to get into the main PAL Expo, there is plenty else to see, and in particular this event, which is 100% open to the public for the first time, I believe, Christian.
Yes, thank you, Richard. I'm Christian. I live in Geneva, and I'm organizer of events, of trade show. And during the situation of the COVID, I have understand it's an opportunity to create a new event in Geneva, because the focus about watching industry move from Basel to Geneva, but the event in PAL Expo is not open for all brands or all type of brands. And we can imagine not easy situation with a lot of guerrilla in the city for a lot of brands try to be in Geneva during the Geneva Watch Week. And the idea was to create a new event, to have a structured solution for some brands. And 2 points was very important in our DNA. The first point was have the agreement of the big actors. It was the FHH, Fondation de Haute Horlogerie, and Rolex. And we have take contact with these 2 organizations, and we have received the agreement to organize a qualitative event in complementary with Watches and Wonders. The second point in our DNA was organize the event not in a cold place. I mean, a place with their legitimacy about the watching industry. And we found the head at the University of Art and Design in Geneva. It is a university has a sector about watch design. By the way, the university has an exhibition place, qualitative one in a very nice historical building, industrial building in Geneva, close of Palexpo, close of Watches and Wonders. It was a perfect combination with our event. Yes, it was the beginning of the adventure.
So what can everybody that's coming along expect from the show? Who do you expect to be attending? And how can people, the general public, get along to Time to Watches?
It's a watch community about professional, like reseller media, but the event is open the 5 days to the public too. It's in our DNA too to have an open event.
And what are people going to find when they arrive? Is it just going to be the watch brands? Is there going to be other entertainment, other things to see and do?
You know, with the COVID has changed a lot in a lot of different type of business, and the event industry must being reinvited too. And it's a trade show only with booth. It's finished. It's an old style of event. Now visitor has more expectation about experiences, about fun. And if you come in Time to Watches, you can see, of course, a more formal part of the event with booth, but you can find more fun with show, with artist performance. We have Time to Party. The last day, we have an event, it's Watch and Match. It's an event targeted to the end consumer to meet the CEO of brands and to buy immediately a watch. Yeah, a lot of fun and in a fun experience.
Excellent. What do you think will be the highlight for yourself? You've organised all of this. What's the one thing you're most looking forward to? Is it just it being over because you've put in all of this work? Are you just like, I just need to get to the end of this? Or is there something actually within the show that you're particularly looking forward to seeing or doing yourself?
It's a good question, Richard. It's on the side of the organizer. For me, the most exciting is when we open the doors the first day and to see a lot of people around the world come to our event. We work during 12 months on an event like that, and it's not concrete during 12 months. And the D-Day, oh my God, we don't have to do all that for nothing. And it's really exciting to see people. You don't know all visitors, but the visitor has right in his calendar visiting Time to Watches, and people arrive. Amazing.
I think from speaking to some of the other brands that are going to be at Time to Watches and at Watches and Wonders, they're expecting this to be the first year post-COVID where they really see everybody, particularly the Asian visitors, visiting for the first time since COVID. So I think people are expecting the numbers of guests, the number of press, the number of people just wanting to cross the threshold of these events to be the biggest it has ever been for a large number of years. So I am sure Time to Watches will be a great success. Christian, thank you very much for joining us. I am very much looking forward to meeting you in person at the event.
Thank you, Richard.
So all the best. Hopefully you don't have too many sleepless nights between now and then organising it, and you can get a bit of rest so that you can enjoy it yourself. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Before you go, Christian, where can people go to find out about the show and get their tickets?
People can go to the website Time to Watches, in one word, timetowatches.com, and we open the ticketing the 15th of March. It's possible to buy a ticket at this time. Between that, of course, people can subscribe to our newsletter to be sure to don't lost one information.
Excellent. Well, go and check out that website at timetowatches.com, and you can check out the large number of brands that are going to be there. There's one or two I'm particularly excited to go and see Zin because they've released a couple of watches just recently that I really do want to see. So hopefully that will be on display at the show. Thank you, Christian, for joining us.
Thank you,
see you in
Richard.
Geneva.
Thank you very much, Richard.
So Ariel, David, your experienced stagers around the exhibition scene, what do you think about all of these other brands displaying at a different show in Geneva at the same time? Does this add or detract from the whole experience?
I mean, sure, it makes it harder. It's not surprising. I mean, look, we went from having 2 major periods, at least across the year, of events in Switzerland. We had Basel World and we had SIHH. And that meant that you could go 2 different times and see 2 different sets of brands. Now, all of that is more or less trying to be consolidated into one period of time. I mean, I personally will be in Geneva for like close to 2 weeks, and I don't know how many brands I'll be able to meet. So there's a huge amount of demand to display, because without those big shows, it's become challenging. So again, it's not surprising or anything like that. Of course, I worry about people's attention, right? Not everyone can see everything, and not every brand can be at the same Watches and Wonders show. So I think that we were expecting this compared to last year. Time to Watches and Watches and Wonders both have more brands than they had before. Again, to be expected. Our ability to see them will be, limited by our humanity, how much energy we have and how many people we can see. Pretty much all other members of the media are in the same space, but we are not in any type of established area when it comes to how this week in Geneva is supposed to be, and what the right way of attending it is, and what order to do the meetings. It's all up in the air. This might as well be a brand new thing. So, when I first started going to Basel World, it was a pretty established show. People could say, okay, Ariel, let me recommend your strategy and where to stay and what to do. Because people have been going to more or less the same thing for a long time. Now, we're just having to make it up as we go along and guess, we'll be able to see this. I don't know. But Time to Watches will definitely be something where we spend at least a day at it. But Watches and Wonders is, of course, going to be our priority.
Now, I may now drop in an interview with Mathieu from Watches and Wonders, part 2 of our chat with him about everything that's going on, or I may not. Well, welcome back to the show, Mathieu. We've already heard from you last time about how things are going for Watches and Wonders, but the time is now approaching. It's getting a bit closer. How are you feeling?
Very good. Thank you, Rick, for asking. Very excited to see Watches and Wonders Geneva coming to life. Now that the countdown has started, we are getting closer to the opening of the event. So I will say I'm very excited to see the World project coming to life after one intense year working with the entire team.
I am equally looking forward to it as well. I'm very excited to be coming out to Geneva towards the end of the month. Now, we're going to focus a bit more on what's happening out with of the PAL Expo Centre itself, and we touched on it a bit last time, but the In the City programme is brand new for this year. What are some of the highlights going to be? What things should we absolutely try and make sure we see in the City programme?
Yes, get ready, because many things will happen in the city of Geneva. The watch rally with 17 locations to encourage the participants to enter the Watches and Wonders boutiques will be one of the highlights, but not only. The guided tours will bring visitors to different watchmaking points of interest in Geneva, such as the famous Horloge Fleurie is one of the steps of this program. There will also be visits of the beautiful Patek Philippe museums that are also part of the program. And not to forget, of course, the special evening, the big party for everyone on Thursday, March 30, from 5 to 9 p.m. to celebrate all together the wonderful world of watchmaking with musical stages, street entertainment, artists, and the concert of a famous electro DJ.
Yeah, you've still not revealed to us yet who it is. I'll twist your arm in the next recording to see if you'll tell us. But it all sounds very good and entertaining. So how does somebody actually, where do we need to send people to actually line up to get to go on one of these organised tours? And I'm assuming it's not yourself that's doing the tour. Who can we expect to be doing these tours? Who's leading them?
So we put together a guided tour highlighting 8 historical watchmaking landmarks in the center of Geneva, with groups of 10 to 15 people. The program, the schedule is online. We have 2 tours per day on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, starting at the nice hub, the Pont de la Machine. And the tours will go also to different places, such as La Place Saint-Gervais, is one of the highlights with the district. It's the district where the watchmakers were working in the 18th century, or the famous Jet d'eau de Genève with historical content about this. It was the energy provider in 1886 for the watchmaking district. I gave you already some tips. So I would recommend for those coming to Geneva, hopefully we'll see many of you. Take your best shoes and come and discover Geneva.
Excellent. So there's the watch tours of the historic locations, and then there's the ability to tour the various brand boutiques also within Geneva. How does that work?
Yes, so we have all the boutiques, the Watches and Wonders boutique. They're planned to have in-store animations, entertainment with presentation of exceptional pieces, vintage collection. Cocktails will also be organized in the boutiques.
Very tempting.
And there will be many different locations for the visitors to play and to enjoy in Geneva.
Excellent. Now, as if guided tours and boutique tours and cocktails wasn't enough, there's also a number of expert talks and panel discussions happening through the week. Where are these going to be, and how does somebody get involved in going along to these talks?
Yes, absolutely. We have a very nice program, very nice talks with conferences taking place in the auditorium of Geneva Palais Expo. The idea is to really propose topics and transversal themes to speak to a wider audience. So during the weekend, the entire weekend, we will have watch experts that will decipher the watchmaking trends or explain, for example, how to start a watch collection. They will also discuss topics such as the metaverse, NFTs, blockchain, circularity. Very interesting subject. We'll also have the ABC of the vintage watch. It's live and, of course, also in replay on our digital platform for those that are not able to be physically here. All the content will also be online.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. So the talks are available to those visiting on the public days on the Saturday and the Sunday. But for those, as you say, who aren't able to make it to Geneva itself, how can they participate in Watches and Wonders digitally? What's the best way to go about that? What do they need to do?
Yes, by connecting on our watchesandwonders.com platform to follow live all what's happening, and also on our social media like Instagram, LinkedIn, and our YouTube channel as well. So all the content is available in replay, the brand's keynotes, the morning show also at 9:30 a.m. and the late show at 4:30 p.m. So all what you need to know about the products, the new launches, do not hesitate to go online, because digital is really a component of our physical event. So for all of you aBlogtoWatch followers that can't make it in Geneva, please be reassured you will be able to follow everything online, and you will also feel and experience the Watches and Wonders atmosphere.
Excellent. Now, to summarise all of that up, what are the 3 things that if someone is coming to Geneva for the first time, 3 things that you would recommend that somebody would see or do?
So definitely Watches and Wonders Geneva, the Salon in Palais Expo, but that's too easy, you will say. So I would recommend also visitors to enjoy the pleasant Geneva atmosphere and watchmaking presence in the entire city. with a stop at l'Horloge Fleurie. It's to be seen. And of course, you also have to go to a nice chocolate factory. There are many in the old town of Geneva.
Excellent. That sounds ideal. I'll take that recommendation on board. Well, Mathieu, we will speak to you in a week or so's time and see if the stress level is increasing at all, though it sounds to me like you're sailing through this. So all the best for the next week, and we will hear from you in a week's time. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Rick.
Do we think that Time to Watches and Watches and Wonders, two different shows, plus there's a number of brands who are just taking up hotel space, a bit similar to the way that Geneva Watch Days has done, that are just taking up hotel space? For example, the new brand from Jean-Claude, from Biver, and others like Maurice Lacroix.
There's going to be a lot. Don't even try to count them.
Yeah, other brands, there's lots of. Do we think, I'd never experienced the vastness of Basel, do we think it's actually better to have these different areas which you can pick off in Geneva on separate days, rather than just there being 1,000 brands in one enormous exhibition? I mean, at the very least, it means you see some daylight for a week.
I mean, Basel World at its highlight had about 1,000 brands, and they had different halls, and some of them you had to walk to. So I think what's important is the fact that there's a lot of brands that want to display. For me, that's the best thing. Brands that want to be there, want to pay to exhibit, want to meet people, means that the industry has a healthy element. If these shows are shrinking and there's less exhibitors, that's a real problem, but we're seeing just the opposite. Basel World did not fail because the watch industry wasn't doing amazingly. It obviously had a lot of issues, but Basel World failed for a lot of systemic issues related to just how expensive it was and things like that. But the moment that Basel World stopped existing, everyone started missing Basel World. Yeah. And Geneva is a better city than Basel. In some ways worse, because Basel is a little bit more relaxed. You can sort of more easily walk from place to place. I think what's important, like I said, is to show that there's a huge demand for watch brands to meet with people like us and buyers and whoever else. It will just take a few years to figure out a way where they realize the best way of meeting with everyone. I would prefer to do more little trips across the year than one massive one, but it's not really up to me, is it? Yeah,
that's true. Until we get the aBlogtoWatch show off the ground. I think Glasgow would be an ideal location, but I'm biased. So Time to Watches has a number of brands at it, some of which most folk will know, some of which they won't. And listen out for interviews with a few of the brands that are going to be Time to Watches. I have spoken to a few of the ones that I think will be most interesting to the listeners, so look out for that. If you're listening to this on the aBlogtoWatch weekly channel, you need to go immediately and subscribe to Spending Time, because we will have so much coverage. We're going to split it across channels and try and keep you updated with the news as it goes along here. But I imagine a number of the interviews in the full versions will drop on a separate channel, so it's not just to clog up everything. It means you can go and pick and choose what you want to listen to from the individual brands while keeping across the news in general by listening to us at aBlogtoWatch Weekly. So yeah, looking forward to Time to Watches. Christian seemed like a great guy. I think he's the guy, he'll be the guy that knows where the party's at. So I recommend going along and finding Christian at Time to Watches, as well as checking out everything that Mathieu's speaking about from Watches and Wonders, particularly the public days and the various tours that are on. And all the boutiques seem to be getting involved, including big brands that aren't involved with Watches and Wonders, at least not yet. So look out for, I'll not name them, but there are obviously some significant brands that aren't there that do have dealers, that do have showrooms in the centre of Geneva, and I know that they are also getting involved. I believe there's around 17 different brands actually in the city itself that are sort of linking together. You'll be able to go to and from, and they'll all be engaged in the whole kind of, here is the heart of watches for a week. So gentlemen, what are you, it's a couple of weeks away now, any particular brands you're excited to see? Now, I mean, a lot of it we've seen, all the media stuff come in, all the NDAs have been signed. we've had sneak peeks of quite a lot of stuff. Is there anything, without giving away the NDAs, is there anything you're particularly going, yeah, I'm definitely going to this brand to see what they have to offer?
I mean, we don't have much of a choice. We're going to see a lot of brands. I think what's exciting is the things we don't expect. Oftentimes, the watches that are not part of pre-releases, that are not, launched beforehand, those tend to be the most interesting things for us. So I think what I like is the unknown, going in there and being pleasantly surprised. I have a feeling that David feels the same way. It really is that sense of discovery, which is the most exciting.
Can you remember something from the past that really engaged you in that way, like being surprised by something you saw at the old Baselworld or at SIHH?
The funny thing that comes to mind is with Tissot and their smartwatch. For like 4 years in a row, they'd be like, here's the latest update to it. I'm like, is it coming out yet? They're like, no. And I think it was really funny because we're really excited about this Tissot smartwatch. And of course, eventually came out. But it was just really funny that like we were excited to be like, what are the updates? And I think that's sort of the interesting stuff. It isn't the products which are ready. It's all the stuff in like various stages of development that we oftentimes can't really show. But they sort of be like, hey, what do you guys think of this? That's really a lot of the fun stuff. And again, there are certain products that just take years. We're never really sure why, but certain products just they take years. And I think if anything, we're sort of more excited about the amusement than, I can't wait to see that one watch. Because frankly, there's so many watches out there. We don't leave the show thinking, wow, I needed to see more watches. That's not really the emotion that we have.
David, favorite historical memory from the old Baselworld or SIHH?
Well, there are some good ones for sure. Some of them are related to security and organization and all that kind of stuff, and just trying to arrange meetings. One of my favorite memories is when I've technically snuck one of my friends into one of the big brand photography sessions that we were having. Because they were just being very unpleasant with him and would not help him do anything like that. And I would just tell him, like, just walk really close to us. And he just totally walked through the whole thing without any sort of accreditation or whatever. And he didn't cause any trouble. He was like totally another person in a room that had like 60 people in there, But it was like just this general feeling of ridiculousness of the tension and just making it difficult. Because technically, what is this? This is a sales and press event. And then they go and they deliberately make it. One of the reasons why it happened, one, obviously, because I wanted to happen. The other one was that because I still remember early on, like one of the first few Baselworlds and SHHs that we did, Ariel did a handful of them before I joined. But even when I joined, I think it was like 2014 or something like that, brands were making so freaking difficult the whole thing for us, Do you remember, Ariel? Like, we had to like try and arrange these meetings and go there, and there were no watches. Oh, the watches are in another room. And we were like, okay.
I mean, literally, if it wasn't for me being a rude American, we wouldn't have seen, 60% of the watches we saw.
Yeah, half of the watches, easy. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I literally had to be like, well, we're sitting here. Can we do something? Or could you go walk in that room and maybe see if it's available? Like, I'd have to say stuff like that, kind of tell them how to do their job. And I wasn't necessarily proud of it, but honestly, and I David will attest to it, if I didn't do that, like, we wouldn't have seen watches. We wouldn't have got stuff done. We may have not even had a meeting to begin with. Like, that type of being assertive does help in that environment a lot.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'll be a good show. And it does genuinely sound like Geneva is going to be absolutely jumping. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening in. Do check out Spending Time channel for interviews. I don't know what we're going to drop in this show in terms of interviews. They might all come next week. But in any event, I hope you enjoyed it and you will join us again next week. David, any plans? What exciting? You still looking for a famous watch to be delivered to you? That's all you've got you're just sitting in the house waiting for a parcel to be delivered for the next week?
Yes, I am. Technically I'm ready to pounce and just go to the boutique at any moment, but yeah, and hopefully I will take delivery of one or two cool watches in Geneva while we are there and create some content with those once time allows. And once I have actually those freaking watches on hand. We'll see.
Good stuff. Ariel, a week of recovery and repacking?
Definitely some recovery. Got to repack. There's a lot of logistics to think about. One of the fun things, and David mentioned this, is what watches we're going to wear. Because brands definitely look at what we wear. And I think it starts with us being like, oh, let's wear something impressive. But then over time, we wear more like weird watches that make them question. So
Yes.
I just think of like, what are the weird watches I can wear to confuse them or distract them away from everything? Because the people, the brands, they kind of live in their booth. They don't get to see anything, and they're so excited by having like people from the outside world come in, and it's kind of nice.
Kudos to them. They always give great reactions when we bring all these wonky watches in there, and that just shows that people in this industry still love watches very much, and that's cool. Exactly. I'm still thinking about what to wear, but you guys will learn about it once we're there.
I think, gentlemen, we might have to put this to a vote. I think for next week's show, the pair of you have to come up with 3 options. And then if you're listening to this episode, if you listen to the show on Spotify, we'll put out a poll and see if we can get people to vote for which watch you should wear. To day one. You can take more than one watch, obviously, but which watch you should wear for the day one meetings. Cool. Well, thank you for tuning in. See you all again next week. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Catch you next week. Bye-bye.